Okay, welcome to mutantbase.com. I'm going to talk a lot about your plucking hand technique, how to eliminate acute angles on your plucking hand technique. Several years ago, I developed carpal tunnel on my right hand. I actually had a pinched nerve on my left shoulder, which kept me from wearing the bass on my shoulder, so that meant me sitting down whenever I gigged. I just had to sit down, because otherwise if I wore my bass, my left hand would just go numb. So, sitting down, playing after years, then I developed carpal tunnel sitting down because now my bass was higher up and I was constantly crouching over like this. I developed this bad angle on my plucking hand, and that is what caused the nerve to become damaged there. If you look at my right hand, you can see swelling right there. That is carpal tunnel. No swelling on my left hand, but swelling on my right. Anyway, now I'm able to play for hours. I was able to, what I did was started thinking, if I'm having all this pain on my hands, I started thinking about maybe my body's telling me to change my technique. And so this is the technique I came up with in order to cope with the injury that I had. And now I can play for hours. Let's get right to it. Started when I was playing my bass or practicing my bass, I would have a lot of pain. I started putting the bass on my lap, just so I could play music still. I just noticed I didn't have pain in my right hand or my plucking hand. If you're lefty, it looks like this. Yeah, see, now I'm lefty. Anyway, I noticed when I put the bass on my lap, my wrist is now neutral. Notice this neutral wrist, no angles are formed. So I can play with a neutral wrist. Now, a lot of people talk about a floating thumb concept where your thumb follows. And I'll get back to that later, but I'll tell you why I don't do that. But let me show you the process first and how I get there. And then hopefully you might find this technique helpful and maybe adopt it to your playing style. So I started observing, what does it feel like when my wrist is neutral? And I started asking myself, how can I recreate that when my bass is standing up? But some observances that I noticed. When the bass is on my lap, my palm is almost touching the bass or almost, flush against the bass. If my palm is further away from the bass, naturally a wrist bend will form. So the further my palm is from the bass, the further my bend on the wrist. Okay, so that's the first observation I noticed. I noticed if my palm is close to the bass, whether I anchor my thumb or not, if I just float my thumb to one string before, either way, my wrist stays neutral. Okay, so then I started applying this on the bass here. Keep my palm somewhat close to the bass. Now I'm able to play with no bend on my wrist. The first thing, though, I noticed, if my anchor, though, is on a string, it's really hard to keep my palm on the bass. Well, actually, you can do it. But I noticed it's really easy. There's a tendency for your palm to start to float away from the bass when you start anchoring your thumb. And if your thumb stays anchored on your lower string, the more acute the angle. If you follow, you still have somewhat of a bend. Okay? So I wanted to get rid of that too. Another thing I noticed is when I float my thumb, if I put a little bit of tension on my thumb, or just rest my thumb, you can see my wrist flex right there. That flex is all you need to create tension within your wrist. So I eliminated the thumb altogether, and now my thumb actually really hovers. So I have probably more of a true floating thumb. It just hovers. It doesn't actually rest on any string. So that is how I incorporate it. Now I also noticed this. A lot of people, they rest their forearm on their bass, particularly about where their elbow is, about a couple inches away from the elbow. That will naturally make it hard for you to keep your wrist neutral. Your wrist will naturally bend when you do that. Simply slide your arm back just a couple more inches. Get your palm closer to your base, and now we have a relaxed, neutral wrist. You can see my wrist here. If you're lefty, check out my cool mirrored effect. See that neutral wrist? And my thumb completely floats. I'm not using my thumb at all, not resting it. Notice this technique relaxed my hand and my wrist tremendously, and I'm able to play for hours now and not feel pain in my wrists. You can check out another article on my website, the shotgun method, that talks about your left hand or your fretting hand technique. I hope that helps any of you who are probably experiencing some nerve damage or any sort of tingling or numbness in your hands or any carpal tunnel syndrome symptoms. Maybe this technique or this video can help alleviate those acute angles and keep your wrist neutral and keep you from feeling those pains. All right? Check it out, www.mutantbase.com. Take care.